Chapter 3, Fire in His Eyes, from the song. I saw him cross the divide, fire in his eyes. Death tries to hide, the deep went still as he arrived. The keys of hell hung low at his side. He walked through death, the Son of Man. I saw him. I need you to understand what those 3 words meant, coming from someone who had been waiting as long as I had. I saw him, not a vision, not a dream, not a symbol or a shadow or another priest carrying the blood of something that had died in its place. I saw him, the one, the actual one, the promise in person, walking towards us through the place where no living thing had ever walked. And he was nothing like what I expected. I don't know what I thought the deliverer would look like. Maybe I thought he'd come the way Moses came to Egypt, with signs and wonders announced ahead of time, plagues rolling out like a carpet before his feet. Maybe I thought he'd come the way David came to Goliath, young, confident, almost casual, like the outcome was never in question. Maybe I thought he'd come the way the angels came, blinding, terrifying, dropping people to the ground before they could even get a look. But he didn't come like any of that. He came like a man who had just been through something. I could see it on him. Not weakness. Don't misunderstand me. There was nothing weak about what I saw, but there were marks. His hands, his feet, his side, his forehead. He had been wounded recently. Whatever happened to him in the world above had cost him something. He carried the evidence of it the way a soldier carries scars from a battle he has already won, not with shame, but with the quiet authority of someone who paid the price and came out on the other side. But his eyes, that's what I couldn't stop looking at. His eyes were fire, not the kind of fire that destroys, though I knew in my bones he could destroy anything he wanted. This was the kind of fire that sees, the kind that looks at you and you realize that nothing about you is hidden. Nothing about you is unknown. Everything you thought you ever had, every prayer you ever whispered, every sin you ever committed, every act of faith you ever stumbled through, he saw all of it at once, and he was not turning away. He just kept coming. I had stood near Abraham and felt warmth. I had listened to David hum and felt peace. But this, looking at this man's eyes, I felt known. Completely, entirely, down to the bottom of everything I was. Known, and not condemned. Known, and wanted. I almost fell down. Several of us did. But it was the other side of the divide that reacted first. The moment he appeared, the very instant his form became visible, the darkness screamed. I don't have a better word for it. It wasn't a human scream. It wasn't the sound of suffering souls over there, though they went silent for the first time since I'd arrived. This was something else. Something underneath the suffering, something that had been hiding behind the torment, using it as camouflage. The powers, the rulers, the authority of that dark realm, the things that had held the keys to death since Adam's fall, they screamed because they recognized him, and they tried to hide. Death, the force, the power, the thing itself, tried to hide from the man with nail scars in his hands. If it wasn't the most terrifying moment I had ever witnessed, it might have been the most absurd. The thing that every human being has feared since the beginning of time, the great enemy, the last word, the final darkness, saw Jesus coming and looked for somewhere to run. There was nowhere to run. He stepped across the divide like it wasn't there. I need to stop and tell you what that means, because I don't think you can understand it unless you stood on one side of that chasm and stared at it for as long as I did. The divide was absolute. It was the one thing that was fixed in that entire realm. People on our side could not cross to theirs. People on their side could not cross to ours. Abraham himself explained this to the rich man. It was the law of that place. It was the boundary that could not be moved. And he walked through it like a man stepping over a crack in the road. He didn't break the divide. He didn't struggle against it. He didn't need a bridge, a door, or permission. He just crossed, because the divide, like everything else in that place, existed under his authority. It always had. The boundary that had been absolute for every soul on both sides was nothing to the one who set it there in the first place. That's when I understood something that I had never understood before. All those years of waiting, all those centuries of resting on the good side of the divide, I had thought of myself as safe because of where I was standing. And I was safe, but my safety was never about the location. My safety was about him. The same authority that fixed the divide was the same authority that was now crossing it. He made the rules, all of them, and he was there to finish what every rule had been pointing to. The deep went still. That's the only way I can describe what happened next. Everything, every sound, every tremor, every vibration in that place stopped. Not gradually like a song fading out, instantly, like someone put their hand over the mouth of the entire realm and said, "Enough." Have you ever been outside in a storm, real bad wind, rain coming sideways, trees bending, and then suddenly the wind just stops? Not a lull, a full stop. And for about 3 seconds, the silence is louder than the storm was. That's what this was, except the storm had been raging since the fall of man, and it stopped in the space between one heartbeat and the next. He stood there in the middle of everything, between the rest and the torment, between the faithful and the fallen, between the light and the dark, and both sides were staring at the same person with completely different expressions. On our side, wonder. On their side, terror. And at his side, hanging low, like a soldier's weapon after the battle is over, were the keys. I didn't know what they were at first. They caught the light, if you could call it light, and something about them made my chest tighten, not with fear, with recognition, like seeing something you've been dreaming about for so long that when it finally shows up in front of you, your whole body reacts before your mind does. Keys, the keys of death, the keys of Hades, the keys to every door that had ever been locked against the people of God, the keys to every chain, every cell, every holding place that had kept the faithful in waiting and the fallen in torment since the beginning. He hadn't always had them. That's what hit me. Those keys had belonged to someone else. The power of darkness held them, gripped them, used them to lock the door on every person who had ever died. Death had the keys, and death decided who stayed and who didn't. And for thousands of years, that arrangement had been the way things worked. But the man who was standing in front of us had just taken them, not negotiated for them, not borrowed them, not asked politely, taken them, ripped them out of the grip of every power that thought it had the final word on human destiny. He had walked into death, not around it, not over it, through it, and on his way through, he had taken the keys from the hand of the one who thought he owned them. I would later learn what he said about this moment in the revelation given to John. He would say it plainly, I am he who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of Hades and of death. I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys. That's not a request. That's not a negotiation. That's a king standing in the middle of conquered territory, holding up the keys to the kingdom he just took and announcing to every power in every realm that the management had changed. The keys hung low at his side, not raised in triumph, not shaken in anyone's face, just there, resting, like they had always belonged to him and were simply back where they were supposed to be. And maybe that's the truest thing about it. Maybe they were always his. Maybe the darkness had only been borrowing them, holding them on a lease that had an expiration date written on it from the very beginning. And the expiration date was today. He looked at us, not past us, not through us, at us, each of us. The way you look at someone you've come a very long way to find. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. David, from the first time since I'd known him, had nothing to hum. Moses, the man who had spoken with God face to face, was staring at the face of God and weeping. Abraham, old Abraham, the father of nations, the man who believed when believing made no sense. Abraham looked at this scarred, fire-eyed, key-holding man standing in front of him and whispered something I almost didn't catch. The Lamb. 2 words. That's all he said. Like everything he ever believed, everything he ever waited for, every piece of the puzzle he had carried in his chest for longer than any of us, it all came down to 2 words. The Lamb. The ram in the thicket was a picture. The Passover lamb was a shadow. Every animal that ever bled on every altar in every generation was a placeholder. This was the real thing. The Lamb of God, the one who didn't just cover sin but carried it. All of it, for all of them, for all of us, for all of time, and put it to death in his own body. And now he was here, standing in the realm of the dead, not dead himself, alive, more alive than anything I had ever seen, alive in a way that made our rest look like sleep and the darkness look like a candle that someone was about to blow out. He walked through death, the Son of Man, and he wasn't done yet. Closing chapter 3.